Commander Deho stood on the bridge of the S horizon, his hands clasped behind his back as he watched the view screen. 3 massive warships hung in space above New Jeju, their weapons pointed down at the colony world below. They belonged to the Vrax Empire, one of the oldest and most powerful military forces in the galaxy. The ships were dark gray and covered in armor plating that could withstand nuclear explosions. Their gun ports glowed with charging energy. 15,000 human civilians lived on New Jeju farmers. Teachers, engineers, families who had traveled across the stars to build a new home. They had been there for 30 years, growing crops and raising children under alien suns. Now the Virax claimed this world belonged to them. Ancient territorial rights, they said. The Galactic Council had agreed. Deho had watched the vote happen in real time. 43 species sat on the council. Only 7 had voted in favor of humanity. The rest either voted for the Virax or abstained. It was not even close. Earth's ambassador had stood before them and pleaded. He had shown documents proving humans had surveyed and settled the world legally. He had offered compensation and alternative solutions. The council had barely listened. Captain Mingi transmitted from the orbital defense platform that circled New Jeju. Her voice was steady, but Deho could hear the tension underneath. Commander, the Vrax Admiral, just sent another message. We have 72 hours to evacuate all civilians, or they will begin bombardment. Our platform has 8 defensive cannons. They have 3 battleships and 12 support vessels. Deho closed his eyes for a moment. 8 cannons against 15 warships. It would be a massacre. Understood, Captain. Continue evacuation procedures. Move as many people as possible to the transport ships. But there were not enough transport ships. Even if they worked around the clock, they could maybe save 8,000 people. That left 7,000 to die. The Vrax knew this. They had calculated it perfectly. This was not about territory. This was about sending a message to humanity. Know your place. Accept what we decide, or watch your people burn. For 200 years, humanity had been part of the galactic community. For 200 years, they had followed every rule, signed every treaty, and pursued peace at every opportunity. The other species saw this as weakness. The Variks were warriors who had conquered a dozen worlds. The Tal'Nari were traders who controlled 3 major hyperspace lanes. The Kresh were scientists who had mastered gravity manipulation. All of them looked at humans and saw nothing impressive. Humans were slow compared to the Vrax. They could not breathe methane like the Selkari. They did not have natural armor like the Kresh. They were just soft. Pink creatures who talked too much about peace and negotiation. The council had grown tired of listening to them. Ambassador Junho sat in his quarters aboard the diplomatic vessel orbiting the council's home station. He had not slept in 3 days. His eyes were red, and his hands shook as he poured another cup of coffee. He had spent 2 centuries building relationships with council members. He had learned their languages and their customs. He had celebrated their festivals and mourned their dead. And when Earth needed them most, they had turned away. His communication console blinked. It was Admiral Hunhua from Earth Command. Junho almost did not want to answer. What could he possibly say? That he had failed? That all his work meant nothing? He pressed the button. Hyanwu's face appeared on the screen. The Admiral was old, nearly 80, with gray hair and deep lines around his eyes. He looked tired, but his voice was firm. Ambassador, I need you to return to Earth immediately. Junho blinked. Admiral, I should stay here. I can still try to negotiate. Maybe if I speak to the Vrax directly? No. Hyanwu's tone left no room for argument. Your diplomatic mission is over. The Council has made their decision. Now we make ours. Something in the Admiral's voice made Junho's stomach tighten. What are you saying? Come home, Junho. It is time. Transmission ended. Junho sat in the darkness of his quarters and felt a chill run down his spine. Time for what? Back at the horizon, Deho received a coded transmission from Earth Command. The encryption was military grade, the kind used only for the most sensitive operations. He went to his private ready room and locked the door before opening it. The message was short. 3 lines of text and a set of coordinates. Operation Silent Thunder is authorized. All fleet elements proceed to designated positions. Await final command. Daeho read it 3 times. He had known about Silent Thunder. Every commander in the Earth's defense fleet knew about it. But it was theoretical. A contingency plan. Something they trained for, but never expected to use. He looked at the coordinates. They formed a sphere around New Jeju with a radius of 10 million kilometers. He pulled up the fleet registry and started calculating. If Earth was committing to this, they would need at least 200 ships. The official Earth Defense Fleet had 63 vessels. Where would the others come from? Unless the rumors were true. Unless humanity had been building in secret. Unless everything the Council thought they knew about human military capability was wrong. His hands moved across the console, sending encrypted acknowledgments. The horizon changed course, moving into position. Around the galaxy, other human ships received the same orders. They left their patrol routes and their dock stations. They engaged their faster-than-light drives and disappeared from Council sensors. On New Jeju, families packed their belongings into small bags. Children cried. Parents tried to stay calm. Captain Minji watched from the orbital platform as transport ships made trip after trip up from the surface. Too slow, too few. She wanted to scream. She wanted to blast every Vrax ship out of the sky. But 8 cannons against 15 warships was suicide. Her second officer, a young man named Taiyang, approached her. Captain, I am picking up something strange on long-range sensors. Gravitational anomalies? Lots of them. Moving in from multiple vectors, Mingi frowned. How many? Taiyang checked his instruments again. His eyes widened. Hundreds. Maybe more. They are coming from everywhere. Mingi felt her heartbeat quicken. She pulled up the sensor data herself. He was right. Subtle distortions in space-time, the kind created by ships, traveling faster than light. But these readings were different. Smoother. More controlled. Like nothing she had seen before. Monitoring, she said quietly. And do not say anything to the Vrax. The countdown continued. 72 hours became 60. Became 48. The galaxy watched and waited to see if humanity would bow once again. But in the darkness between stars, forces were moving that the Galactic Council could not see. And Commander Daeho, standing on his bridge, allowed himself a thin smile. They had no idea what was coming. The silence from Earth was unnatural. Every council member noticed it. Humanity had always been vocal, always sending messages and requests and proposals. Their ambassadors filled the communication channels with calls for meetings and negotiations. But now there was nothing. Every human diplomatic station went dark. Every Earth vessel stopped transmitting status reports. The entire human sphere of influence became a black zone on Council sensors. The Varix admiral in charge of the New Jeju blockade, a massive creature named Vorith, found the silence amusing at first. He sat in his command throne aboard the battleship Crimson Fang and laughed with his officers. The humans were sulking like children. Perhaps they were finally accepting their place in the order of things. He ordered his crew to continue charging the bombardment weapons. 40 hours left. On Earth, deep beneath the city of Seoul. Admiral Heinwu walked through corridors that did not officially exist. The bunker complex had been built 200 years ago, when humanity first made contact with alien species. The first meeting had been peaceful, but human leaders had learned long ago that peace was fragile. So they had prepared, quietly, carefully, without telling anyone, the war. Cabinet assembled in a circular room with no windows, 12 people. The highest-ranking military officers, intelligence directors, and civilian leaders. They'd all taken oaths that went beyond normal military service. They were the keepers of humanity's deepest secrets. Hyunwoo stood at the center and activated the holographic display. The Council has forced our hand, he said. His voice echoed in the chamber. For 2 centuries, we have maintained the illusion of weakness. We have hidden our true capabilities. We have let them think we are just another minor species, scrambling for survival. That ends now. The hologram showed a map of human space. But it was not the map the Council knew. This map showed hundreds of facilities that no alien had ever seen. Shipyards hidden in asteroid fields. Research stations camouflaged as mining operations. Weapons development labs in the deep dark between star systems. And ships. So many ships, Defense Minister Kyung-mi spoke up. She was 60 years old and had spent her entire career managing the secret fleet. We have 1,643 vessels ready for deployment. Another 400 in final testing. The stealth systems are operating at 98% efficiency. Council sensors cannot detect them, Yunhua nodded. And the experimental drives? Functional. We can move 3 times faster than any Council vessel. We can jump to any point in known space within hours instead of days. Around the table, faces remained calm, but eyes showed the weight of what they were about to do. They had hoped this day would never come. But hope was not strategy. Thousands of light years away, at the edge of the solar system, Engineer Salmon stood in the control center of Karin Research Station. The station was hidden in the Oort cloud, so far from Earth that sunlight took hours to reach it. It appeared on no official registry. Its existence was known only to a few hundred people. Salmon had worked here for 20 years, developing weapons that humanity prayed it would never need. She entered her authorization codes into the main console. Red lights turned green. Systems that had been dormant for decades hummed to life. In the massive bays beneath the station, machines began assembling drones. Small ones, no bigger than a person's fist. Each one contained enough concentrated energy to level a city block. The fabrication systems could produce 10,000 per hour. Her assistant, a young engineer named Insu, watched the production counters climbing. How many are we making? As many as we can before this is over, Salmon said quietly. 17 billion should be sufficient. Insu's face went pale. 17 billion. That is enough to glass every Council homeworld 3 times over. Yes, Salmon did not look at him. That is the point. We do not need to use them. We need them to know we could. Aboard the Horizon, Lieutenant Jiwon sat at her tactical station and tried to make sense of the data flooding her screens. She was 26 years old, top of her class at the Naval Academy, and she had thought she knew everything about Earth's military capabilities. She had been wrong. Ships were appearing on her long-range sensors. Not the 63 vessels of the official Earth Defense Fleet, hundreds of others. They moved in from impossible directions using flight paths that should not exist. They did not follow standard approach vectors. They simply appeared. Their faster-than-light drives producing barely a ripple in space dash time. She pulled up the identification codes. Most of them were not in her database. They had designations like Shadow Fleet and Ghost Squadron and Phantom Group. She had never heard of any of them. She checked the ship. Classifications: destroyers, cruisers, carriers, dreadnoughts, vessel types that supposedly did not exist in the human. Navy Commander Daeho appeared behind her. Lieutenant, what you are seeing is classified at the highest level. You will speak of it to no one outside this bridge. Understood? Guan nodded slowly. Sir, how did we build all of this? Where did the resources come from? We have been preparing since first contact, Daeho said. Every mining operation. Every asteroid we prospected, every facility we built, a portion always went to the secret fleet, small enough that no one noticed, large enough that over 200 years it added up. Jawan turned back to her screen. The numbers kept growing. She counted 500 ships now, then 600, then 700, all converging on New Jeju, all invisible to Council sensors. She felt a strange mixture of pride and fear. Humanity had done this. Her people had planned and built and prepared for 2 centuries. But what would they become once the galaxy saw what they truly were? On New Jeju, Captain Minji coordinated the evacuation with mechanical efficiency. Transport ships landed, loaded civilians, and lifted off in a constant cycle. They had managed to evacuate 11,000 people. 4,000 remained. 30 hours left. She received a coded transmission from the Horizon. From Daeho, The message was short. Hold position. Do not engage. Do not retreat. Trust us. Minji read it 3 times. Trust us. Easy to say when you were on a warship 20 million kilometers away. She looked down at the planet. Her sister lived down there. Her nephew and niece? If this went wrong, they would die. But she had served with Daeho for 10 years. If he said trust us, she would trust. The Vraks continued their preparations. They had no idea that they were surrounded. Their sensors showed empty space in all directions. They saw the horizon and a few other Earth vessels, exactly where they expected them. The official fleet, small and outmatched. The humans had accepted defeat. Surely, this would be over soon. Admiral Voreth received reports from his sensor officers. Nothing unusual. No reinforcements. No hidden threats. The humans had given up. He felt a small disappointment. He had hoped for at least a token resistance. Something to make the victory more satisfying. But weak species were weak. That was the way of the galaxy. He opened a communication channel to the planet. Attention, new Jeju colony. You have 30 hours to complete evacuation. After that time, we will commence bombardment. Any ships remaining in orbit will be destroyed. This is your final warning. Down on the planet, families huddled in shelters and prayed. In space, Captain Minji gripped the armrests of her command chair and waited. Across the galaxy, human ships moved into position like pieces on a chessboard. And on Earth, Admiral Hyunwoo looked at the strategic display and spoke the words that would change everything. All units, this is Earth Command. Execute Operation Silent Thunder. The galaxy is about to learn what happens when humanity stops being polite. In the darkness, the fleet awakened. The 3rd day arrived. On New Jeju, the remaining 4,000 civilians gathered in the central shelter. They had run out of time. The transport ships had done everything possible, but mathematics was cruel. Not everyone could be saved. Families held each other. Some prayed. Others simply stared at the walls, numb with fear. Captain Mingi stood on the command deck of the orbital platform. Watching the countdown on her screen. 2 hours. The Vraks bombardment ships had moved into optimal firing positions. Their weapons were fully charged. Admiral Voreth had sent a final message. Your time is up. Withdraw your platform, or be destroyed with the colony. Minji had sent her response. No, just that single word. The Vraks seemed confused by it. They sent another message demanding she clarify. She ignored them. Her hands rested on the firing controls for her 8 defensive cannons. If they fired on the planet, she would fire on them. It would accomplish nothing except letting her die fighting. But sometimes, that was all you had left. Then every screen in the galaxy came alive. It happened simultaneously, across thousands of worlds. Communication systems activated without authorization. Holographic displays lit up in council chambers. Personal devices in homes and offices suddenly showed the same image. A human face. Ambassador Junho, but different from the tired diplomat who had pleaded with the council days before. His expression was cold. His eyes were hard as diamonds. This is Earth's final communication to the Galactic Council. His voice was quiet, but it carried the weight of 200 years of restrained anger. For 2 centuries, we have pursued peace. We have accepted insults to our dignity. We have compromised on matters of principle. We have bent our necks to your authority. We did this because we believed in a better way. We believed the council represented civilization and law. He paused. Across the galaxy, billions of beings watched. In the council chambers, representatives leaned forward, confused and concerned. How had humans overridden every communication system? That should not be possible. We were wrong, Junho continued. The council does not represent law. It represents the will of the strong imposed upon the weak. You have mistaken our patience for weakness, our restraint for inability, our peace for cowardice. Today, we correct that mistake. Today, humanity announces battle. The image shifted. Junho's face was replaced by a tactical display of the new Jeju system. Admiral Varath saw it on his command screen and felt confusion turn to shock. The display showed his 15 ships exactly where they were, but it also showed something else. Thousands of new contacts, human vessels appearing on sensors that had shown empty space seconds before. What is this? Vorath roared at his sensor officer. Where did they come from? His officer's hand shook as he worked the controls. Admiral, I do not know. They were not there. Now they are. It is impossible. But impossible was happening. All around the Vrax fleet, human ships materialized like ghosts, becoming solid. Destroyers, cruisers, battleships, carriers, launching fighter wings. And in the center of it all, massive dreadnoughts that dwarfed anything the Vrax had built. The human fleet did not number in dozens. It numbered in thousands. Captain Minji stood frozen on her platform, staring at the tactical display. Her screen, which had shown 15 VRX vessels and her lonely platform, now showed an armada. The sky above New Jeju was full of human ships. They had just appeared all at once, as if they had been there all along but invisible. Her communication console lit up. Commander Deho's voice was calm. Captain Minji, please lower your weapons and move your platform to a safe distance. We have this situation under control. Minji's laugh was half-sob. Where did you all come from? We have been here for 3 days. You just could not see us. The horizon moved forward, along with a dozen sister ships. They engaged their experimental drives and accelerated to speeds that made the Vrax weapons tracking systems scream error messages. In seconds, the human vessels had surrounded the Varix fleet completely. Every Vrax ship now had 10 human ships around it. Weapons locked. Targeting solutions calculated. Waiting, Admiral Vorath sat in his command throne and felt something he had not experienced in 40 years of military service. Fear real. Cold, absolute fear. His fleet was trapped, surrounded, outgunned by a magnitude he could not calculate. Every instinct screamed at him to fight, but tactical analysis showed the truth. If shooting started, his fleet would last maybe 90 seconds. Sir. Incoming communication from Earth Command, his communications officer said. The screen showed an elderly human male in a military uniform. Admiral Huno. His expression was not angry. It was worse. It was disappointed. Admiral Vorath. My name is Hyun Woo. I command the Earth Defense Fleet. All of it. Not just the ships you thought we had. All of them. You are currently surrounded by 2,340 vessels. Each one is more advanced than your best battleship. We can destroy your fleet in under 2 minutes. Or you can power down your weapons and withdraw to a safe distance. Choose quickly. Boris' mandibles clicked in agitation. You are bluffing. No species can hide this many ships. Our sensors would have detected them. Hyun Woo's expression did not change. Your sensors detect what we allow them to detect. For 200 years, you and the Council have observed humanity. You thought you knew us. You were observing shadows. We have been studying you, learning your tactics, understanding your technology, mapping your defenses. While you dismissed us as weak, we were preparing. He gestured, and the display behind him changed. It showed something that made Vorath's blood run cold. Satellite networks. Positioned in orbit around Council worlds. Thousands of them. They had been there for decades, invisible and undetected. Those are observation satellites, Hyun Woo said. Not weapons. Proof that we could have struck any Council world at any time. We chose not to. We chose peace. But you have taken our choice away. So now you will see what human technology really looks like. In orbit around every major Council homeworld, the satellites revealed themselves simultaneously. The Vrax homeworld. The Talnuri trading hub. The Kresh science stations. Suddenly their orbital space was full of objects that had been invisible minutes before. Panic spread through Council military channels. They had been watched, monitored, vulnerable. For how long? Back at New Jeju, Commander Deho opened a wideband channel to the entire system. This is Commander Deho of the SS Horizon to all vessels. The blockade of New Jeju is over. Any Vrak ship that wishes to leave may do so. Power down your weapons and begin withdrawal. You will not be harmed. But if you fire a single shot at this colony or at any human vessel, we will respond with overwhelming force. On the planet below, families heard the announcement through their emergency radios. Children looked up with hope. Adults dared to believe. In the central shelter, someone started crying, then another. Soon, the entire shelter was filled with the sound of relief and joy and disbelief. Mingy received evacuation protocols, but not for the remaining colonists. For the Vrak's personnel, Captain, please coordinate with any Vrak support staff or civilians who wish to leave the system. We are providing safe passage. Mingy stared at the message. We are rescuing them? After what they tried to do? Deho's voice was firm. We are not here for revenge. We are here to teach them that there are rules, and that those rules apply to everyone, including them. Admiral Vorath sat in silence. His officers waited for orders. Fight or flight. Death or surrender. He had conquered 12 species. He had burned 3 worlds. He was a warrior of the Vrak's empire. But he was not a fool. This was not a battle. This was an execution waiting to happen. Stand down all weapons, he said quietly. Begin withdrawal procedures. We are leaving. His officers stared at him. His second officer spoke up. Sir, the Empire will call this cowardice. The Empire can call it whatever they want, Vorath said. I am not sacrificing 15 ships and 8,000 warriors to prove a point. The humans won. Not because they are stronger, because they were smart enough to make us think they were weak. And we were stupid enough to believe it. The Vrak's fleet began powering down their weapons. Slowly, carefully, they started moving away from New Jeju. The human fleet maintained their positions. Weapons still locked on target, but not firing. Letting them go in the council chambers, chaos had erupted. Species representatives were shouting at each other. Some demanded immediate military action. Others called for investigation. A few simply sat in stunned silence. The balance of power that had existed for millennia had just been shattered in minutes, and Ambassador Junho's face appeared one more time on every screen. The Council will convene in 7 days to discuss new terms. Humanity will be presenting proposals for reform. We suggest you listen this time, because we have spent 200 years being patient. We will not spend another 200 being ignored. The council chamber had never been so chaotic. Representatives from 43 species shouted at each other across the circular assembly. Some demanded war against humanity. Others called for immediate negotiations. A few had already started calculating how to shift alliances before the power balance collapsed completely. The chamber that had stood for 3,000 years as a symbol of galactic order now looked like a marketplace full of panicking merchants. Counselor Tarek of the Vrak's Empire stood at his delegation's platform, watching the madness with cold calculation. He was old, even by Vrak standards. He had lived for 230 years. He had fought in 16 major wars. He had personally led the invasion forces that conquered the Melkari system. He knew war. He knew strategy. And he knew with absolute certainty that if the Vrak's Empire went to war with humanity right now, the Vrak's Empire would cease to exist. His aide, younger warrior named Kalen, leaned close. Counselor, what are your orders? The military council wants to know if they should mobilize the full fleet. Tarak turned to look at him. Tell them to stand down. Tell them to review every tactical assumption they have made about human capabilities. And tell them to pray that the humans are as merciful as they claim. Kalen's face showed confusion. You believe we cannot defeat them? I believe they have been 3 steps ahead of us for 2 centuries. Look at what they did. Tarek gestured at the tactical displays that filled the chamber's center. They hid thousands of ships. They developed faster-than-light technology that makes ours look primitive. They positioned satellites around our homeworlds without anyone noticing. This is not just superior technology. This is superior planning and patience. They thought generations ahead, while we thought in quarterly military reports. Across the chamber, the representative from the Talnary Confederacy was having a similar conversation. Her name was Sula, and she had spent 60 years negotiating trade agreements. She understood economics and leverage better than anyone in the council. And right now, she understood that humanity held all the leverage. How long have they been hiding this capability? Her advisor asked. Since first contact, Sula said. Think about it. Every human trade ship that visited our ports, every mining operation they established, every diplomatic exchange, they were watching, learning, gathering intelligence. We thought they were simple. We thought they were naive. They were studying us like scientists study insects. At his own platform, the Kresh representative, a scientist named Voth, was running calculations on his personal computer. The numbers made no sense. The energy requirements to hide that many ships, the resources needed to build them, the coordination necessary to position them without detection. It should have been impossible, unless humanity had technologies that the Kresh, who prided themselves on being the galaxy's greatest scientists, had not even theorized yet. They are using quantum masking for their stealth systems, Voth muttered to himself. And their faster-than-light drives operate on principles I do not recognize. How did they advance so far without us noticing? His assistant provided the obvious answer. We were not looking. We assumed they were primitive. Back at New Jeju, Engineer Salman had arrived aboard one of the command ships. She stood in a conference room with Commander Deho and Captain Mingi, explaining what humanity was about to demonstrate to the council. On the table between them sat a small device the size of a coffee mug.
This is what we call the silence, Salman said.
She spoke quietly, as she always did, but her words carried enormous weight. It generates a quantum field that disrupts faster-than-light travel and communication within a designated zone. When activated, ships cannot jump to light speed. Messages cannot be transmitted. An entire star system becomes isolated from the rest of the galaxy. Minji stared at the device. That is what trapped the Vrax fleet here. Yes, we deployed 3 of these around New Jeju before the Vrax even arrived. They never knew they were already caught in the trap. Deho picked up the device carefully. And we have how many of these? 412. Each one can cover a sphere with a radius of 50 million kilometers. We could isolate every council homeworld simultaneously if necessary. Minji felt her stomach tighten. The implications were staggering. Any species that relied on faster-than-light travel for trade, military coordination, or basic communication would be crippled by these devices. Humanity had developed a weapon that did not kill anyone but could bring entire civilizations to their knees. Are we going to tell the council about this? Mingi asked. Deho set the device down. Eventually, right now, they need to understand that what they saw at New Jeju was a demonstration. A controlled reveal. If we wanted to, we could do much worse. Lieutenant Juan was in the tactical center, analyzing the council's military responses. She had spent the last 6 hours reviewing every defensive formation, every fleet movement, every strategic adjustment the various council species had made in response to humanity's reveal. The results were not encouraging for them. They're panicking, she told her commanding officer. The Varax are pulling ships from their border regions to defend their core worlds. The Talnary are trying to reinforce their trade routes. The Kresh are scrambling their research fleets. None of it will help them. We have studied their doctrines for 200 years. We know exactly how they will respond to every situation. Her commanding officer, Captain Boyan, nodded grimly. What about coordinated action? Could the council species work together to match our capabilities? Juan pulled up a simulation she had been running. In theory, if all 43 species pooled their resources and shared technology completely, they could build a fleet that might match ours in numbers. It would take them 15 years minimum. But that assumes perfect cooperation. Based on historical data, the council species average 3 major disputes per year. They cannot cooperate long enough to pose a threat. Boyan leaned back in his chair. So we have already won. We won 200 years ago when we decided to hide our capabilities instead of showing them off. We just did not tell anyone until now. On the planet New Jeju, the remaining colonists emerged from their shelters into sunlight. Children ran through the streets. Adults hugged each other and cried. Above them, the human fleet maintained a defensive perimeter. The Varric ships were gone. The threat was over. Families could go back to their homes and their farms and their normal lives. In one of the colony's central squares, a young girl named Hannah stood with her mother and looked up at the sky. She was 7 years old and did not fully understand what had happened. She knew the scary ships had left. She knew the human ships had protected them. She tugged on her mother's sleeve. "Are we safe now?" Her mother knelt down and hugged her. "Yes, sweetheart. We are safe. Our people protected us. Will the bad ships come back?" Her mother looked up at the fleet overhead, at the thousands of vessels that had appeared from nowhere to defend them. "No, they will not come back. Because now they know. They know what happens when they threaten us." Back on Earth, Admiral Hunwoo prepared for the council session that would happen in 7 days. He sat in his office reviewing documents with Ambassador Junho. The reforms they were going to propose were extensive. New council charter, species rights protections, mandatory arbitration for disputes, and most importantly, a unified council military command with rotating leadership. Starting with Earth, they will resist, Junho said, especially the older species. They have run the council for millennia. Let them resist, Hunhua said. We have demonstrated capability. Now we demonstrate intent. We will not conquer them. We will not destroy them. We will teach them that there is a better way. Junho smiled slightly. And if they refuse to learn? Hunwoo activated a hologram. It showed the 17 billion drones that Summons Facilities had produced. Each one a tiny weapon of enormous power. Each one positioned somewhere in council space, invisible and waiting. Then we teach them again and again, until they understand. We have 200 years of patience stored up. We can afford to use it. In the council chamber, as the chaos continued, Councillor Tarek made a decision. He requested the floor, and the chamber slowly quieted. All eyes turned to him. The Vrax Empire had been the strongest voice in the council for centuries. What he said now would matter. I have reviewed the tactical data, Tarek said. His voice was calm but firm. I have consulted with our military strategists, and I have reached a conclusion. Humanity has defeated us. Not with weapons, with patience and planning. They played a game that lasted 2 centuries, and we never even knew we were playing. We have 2 choices. We can fight a war we cannot win, or we can accept that the galaxy has changed and adapt to it. The chamber erupted again, but this time the tone was different. Not outrage, understanding, fear turning into acceptance. The old order was gone. A new one was beginning. In humanity, the species they had dismissed as weak and naive was now the strongest power in the known galaxy. 7 days passed. In that time, the galaxy held its breath. Human ships remained in position around New Jeju but did not advance. The satellites orbiting council worlds continued their quiet observation but did nothing hostile. Humanity had shown its strength and then stopped, waiting. The message was clear. We could destroy you. We choose not to. What happens next is up to you. The council chamber filled for the emergency session. Every species sent their highest-ranking representatives. The Vrax brought Councillor Tarek and a full military delegation. The Talonry sent their trade ministers. The Kresh sent their science council. Even minor species that rarely attended council sessions sent observers. Everyone needed to see what would happen when humanity finally spoke from a position of power instead of pleading from weakness. Admiral Hunuan entered the chamber, and the room fell silent. He walked with quiet confidence to the center of the assembly floor. Behind him came Ambassador Junho and several other human officials. But it was Hunwoo who commanded attention. He wore his military uniform without decoration or ceremony, an elderly man in plain clothes who carried the weight of humanity's hidden strength. He did not wait for formal recognition. He simply began speaking. For 3,000 years, this council has operated on a simple principle. The strong dominate the weak. Military power determines law. Species with advanced technology and large fleets make the decisions. Species without them follow or face consequences. You built this system. You have enforced it. And now you are discovering what happens when someone stronger enters the room. The chamber remained silent. No one interrupted. You believed humanity was weak because we pursued peace. You mistook our preference for diplomacy as an inability to wage war. You were wrong. We have the capability to destroy every species in this chamber. Our technology is decades or centuries ahead of yours. Our fleet outnumbers your combined forces. Our weapons can reduce homeworlds to ash. But here is what separates us from you. We do not want to use them. Hyunwoo gestured, and a holographic display appeared above the chamber floor. It showed the new council charter humanity was proposing. Hundreds of pages of reforms and restructuring, these are our terms, not demands, terms, because we are still willing to negotiate, still willing to compromise. But some things are not negotiable. Ambassador Junho stepped forward and began explaining the key points. Species rights protections that made it illegal to threaten civilian populations. Mandatory arbitration for territorial disputes. Economic sanctions for aggressive military action. And most controversial, a unified council defense force under rotating command. Beginning with Earth leadership for the first 20-year term, Councillor Tarek listened carefully. The terms were harsh but not unreasonable. Humanity was not asking for territory. They were not demanding tribute. They were restructuring the council to prevent what had almost happened at New Jeju from ever happening again. It was exactly what a species would propose if they actually cared about peace and justice instead of conquest and power. The Talonry representative stood. Her name was Sula, and she was known for her sharp negotiating skills. Admiral, these reforms would fundamentally change how the council operates. The older species have maintained order for millennia. Why should we accept human leadership? Hyunwoo's expression did not change. Because your order allows strong species to prey on weak ones. Because your system failed to prevent the New Jeju crisis. Because you need leadership that will protect all species, not just the powerful ones. And because if you refuse, we will implement these changes anyway. The room erupted. Several representatives stood and began shouting. How dare humans threaten the council? Who did they think they were? This was not peace. This was conquest with polite words. Hyunwoo waited for the noise to die down. Then he gestured again, and Engineer Soman appeared on the holographic display. She stood in a control center somewhere, looking tired and sad, but determined. This is Engineer Salman, Hyunwoo said. She oversees our advanced weapons development. Salman, please show the council what we have prepared. The display changed to show a single drone floating in space, small and unremarkable. Salman's voice was quiet, but everyone heard her clearly. This drone weighs 3 kilograms. It contains a power core that can release energy equivalent to 50 megatons. We have positioned 17 billion of these throughout council space. They are undetectable by your sensors. They can be activated remotely at any time. She paused to let that sink in. 17 billion weapons, hidden everywhere, waiting. Each one can destroy a building, a ship, or a small military installation with surgical precision. Together, they represent enough destructive capacity to eliminate every military asset in council space. We do not want to use them. We are telling you about them so you understand that resistance is pointless. The chamber had gone completely silent. The mathematics were simple and horrifying. 17 billion drones. 43 council. Species even distributed evenly. That was nearly 400 million weapons per species. Enough to destroy not just military targets, but entire civilizations. Councillor Tarek stood slowly. You have positioned weapons of mass destruction around our homeworlds. Around our colonies, around our military stations. You have held this threat over us for how long? The production began 6 months ago, Soman said. The deployment finished 3 weeks ago. We waited until we had complete coverage before revealing them. We wanted to ensure that no single species could feel safe defying the new order through military action. The Kresh representative, Voth, was running calculations on his console. His face had gone pale. This is impossible. The energy requirements alone, the coordination necessary. How did you transport 17 billion drones without anyone noticing? We used the same stealth technology that hid our fleet, Salman said. And we built them in facilities you did not know existed. Because while you were dismissing us as simple creatures, you were working, planning, preparing for the day when patience would no longer be enough. Yunhua stepped forward again. We are showing you this not as a threat, but as a reality. You can accept these reforms voluntarily. You can work with us to build a better council that protects all species fairly. Or you can resist and discover that we are willing to enforce these changes. The choice is yours, but the outcome is already decided. Ambassador Junho added his voice. We do not want to be tyrants. We want to be partners. But we will not watch innocent species suffer because the powerful species cannot control themselves. New Jeju was the last time that will happen. Either you help us build a new system, or we build it without you. The debate that followed lasted for 6 hours. Species representatives argued and negotiated and tried to find alternatives. But the mathematics of power had shifted permanently. Humanity had demonstrated not just military superiority, but something more important. Strategic thinking that operated on timescales no one else had considered. They had prepared for 2 centuries. They had hidden capabilities that rewrote tactical doctrine. They had positioned assets that made conventional military resistance suicide. Finally, Counselor Tarek stood again. The Vrax Empire accepts humanity's terms. We will support the new charter. We will participate in the Unified Defense Force. And we will adapt to this new reality. One by one, other species added their acceptance. Some enthusiastic, some reluctant, some clearly planning to undermine the changes later. But all of them agreeing, because the alternative was unthinkable. The vote was called. 41 species in favor. 2 abstentions. The reforms passed, back at New Jeju. Commander Daeho stood on the bridge of the horizon and watched the vote results come through. The crew around him celebrated quietly. They had won. Not through violence. Through demonstration of capability and unwavering resolve, the colony below was safe. The threat was over, but Daeho felt no joy. Only relief mixed with sadness. We can never go back to being underestimated, he said quietly to his first officer. From now on, every species will watch us, judge us, wait for us to make mistakes. Then we must not make mistakes, his officer replied. Captain Mingi received a communication from her sister on the planet. Her nephew and niece wanted to thank the captain who had protected them. She smiled and sent a message back. She would visit soon. Right now, she had work to do. The orbital platform needed repairs. The colony needed supplies. Life had to return to normal, but normal had changed. In the sky above New Jeju, human warships maintained their patrol. Not occupiers, protectors. The difference mattered. Lieutenant Ji-Wan was promoted to Senior Tactical Advisor and assigned to the new Council Defense Force headquarters. Her first task was helping other species upgrade their defensive systems. Not to threaten them, but to protect them from external dangers the Council had ignored while fighting among themselves. She found it strange at first, teaching her former potential enemies. But then she remembered what Admiral Heinwu had said. We lead not through fear, but through the strength that chooses restraint. On Earth, in the deep bunkers beneath Seoul, the War Cabinet gathered one final time for this crisis. Admiral Hunwo addressed them with exhaustion clear on his face. We have reshaped the galaxy. We have proven our strength. Now comes the harder part. Proving we deserve to lead. We must be better than the system we replaced. Fairer, more just, more patient. Because they will be watching for any sign that we are no different from the tyrants who ruled before. Defense Minister Kung Mi nodded. And if they test us, if they push boundaries, then we remind them gently. And if gentle reminders fail, we remind them firmly. But always with restraint. Always with the minimum force necessary. We must never become the thing we fought against. The new Council Defense Force began operations. Human officers worked alongside Vrox warriors and Talnery merchants and Kresh scientists. It was awkward at first, but slowly, understanding developed. The other species began to see that humans meant what they said. They wanted partners, not subjects. A year after the New Jeju crisis, Counselor Tarek met with Admiral Hyun-woo in private. The old warrior looked at the old admiral and spoke honestly. You could have conquered us all. You had the power. Why did you stop? Hyun-woo poured tea for both of them. Because conquest creates hatred, and hatred creates endless war. We wanted peace. Real peace. Not the peace of submission, but the peace of mutual respect. We spent 200 years preparing to defend ourselves. We will spend the next 200 years teaching you that there is a better way. Tarek took the tea and sipped it slowly. You are a strange species. Terrifyingly powerful, yet choosing restraint. I think I am beginning to understand why you succeed where others fail. On New Jeju, young Hannah played in the streets with her friends. Above her, the defense platforms kept watch. But now, they were staffed by mixed crews. Humans and Vrax working together. Former enemies learning to trust. The galaxy had changed, not through war. Through the demonstration that the strongest power of all was the power to choose peace when you could have. Chosen destruction, and in the darkness between stars. The 17 billion drones remained in position, silent, waiting. A reminder to anyone who might forget the lesson. Humanity had the capacity for terrible violence. They simply chose not to use it. As long as you remembered that peace was possible, forget it, and the drones would remind you. The galaxy had learned. Humanity was not weak. They were patient. And there was a universe of difference between the two.